Hey guys! Just here, that was really weird. Just here, I'm talking about how I go through and plan a guided reading lesson. This is the template that I use, and I created it very similar to like how their BAS looks. You'll see I always have the level and the text. My instructional focus is in this section, so that's kind of like their standard for the guided reading lesson or their objective. I have words to preview, so I always first initially highlight the sight words that are going to be in there just because those are words that they should know quickly, so I want to quickly go over them. And then also just any other words in the book that I know they're not going to be able to sound out or get, we preview them beforehand. And they're words that even like based on the phonics skills they know, they won't be able to get them, so I just have to tell them. Then in this section before reading, it's very similar again to how BAS works. So you enter the title, you enter the book just like how BAS does. It has a little introduction about the book. When I create this, I'm really purposeful about like how I introduce it. Same with BAS, like it'll say, read to find out what she likes and what she loves, like when that love part is different in that level A book or whatever. So I'm really purposeful about like at the end of this book, it says that there's like not a dinosaur at the zoo. So I'll say read to find out what animals are at the zoo and what animals there are not. And then I just, words to review. So this is the point where I would then go and review these words and then talk about the strategy with my kids' whole group. So for example, I would introduce the title and I'd say, today we're going to read this book, What is at the Zoo? In this book, someone is asking if certain animals are at the zoo. Read to find out what animals are there and what animals are not. Then I'll go through words. Before we read, we're going to look at a few of these words. Everyone go to page 9. What animal do you see? Yada, yada, yada. Then right after we review the words, I'm going to review the strategy with them. So for level C book, a really good strategy is lips the fish or getting your mouth ready. So that's using your picture on the page, right? So let's say, this is a good one. Oh, this is one that my kids do. So like getting your mouth ready would be like looking at the picture. A lot of my kids said polar bears at first. So then when they go through and read, they realize that if they get their mouth ready for this word, it's going to be, that can't be polar bear, so it must be bear. So we'll review that strategy. I have these. So this is for eagle eye. I would get out the lips the fish one, which is right here. And I would say like, this is the strategy we're focusing on today, lips the fish. I'll then like leave it out in the middle of the table. So if I notice a kid's not doing that, I can go back and point to it and reference it. I'll usually keep out the previous one they've learned before too, because it's always good to use all the strategies you've learned. So this eagle eye is the strategy that I use for levels like A and B. Sometimes B I'll start to incorporate lips the fish depending on the book. So I'll have these out and on the table at all times. Then my kids will be reading. I'm checking in, and then afterwards I have my after reading section. So these again are very similar to BAS in the sense they have from the text questions and then outside of the text questions. So from the text questions, they have to get them right from the text. So what animals were at the zoo? What animal was not at the zoo? Outside the text questions are, again, BAS has a lot of these, like, why are there no dinosaurs at the zoo? What other animals could be at the zoo? So it's just taking these questions that are related to the book, but asking them to kind of extend beyond it. Yeah, so this, I would just say this part of the section is more for me as a teacher, getting like my objective, my text, my level, and for me to plan out words, sight words I need to review. When I actually begin my lesson, I start with before reading, and I go through all of this. And then after the text is when I use this section. And I would go through my questions. Then I'll have a tracker a lot of times, or sometimes like if I can't find a piece of paper, I laminated all of these too, so I'll write notes in here because then I can transfer that later, like with an expo marker, and just kind of note like if a kid wasn't able to answer a question, or if like the strategy was still a struggle for them, maybe if they needed to be moved into a new group, or if they're like rocking that strategy, and maybe even could be moved into a higher group.